about ceasefires and whatever. Reports have been coming out overnight about continuing missile attacks.
Well, British expat David Mason was caught up in those missile attacks on Friday when he and his son barely escaped with their lives after an Iranian missile exploded next to them in a bombing raid in northern Israel.
Let's speak to David, because David joins us now from his hospital bed, actually, to tell us about this terrifying ordeal. David, how are you?
I'm alive. I'm alive. That's one thing. Yeah. I'm alive.
How bad was it? A close call, was it?
It was very close. The missile hit about 25 feet away from us.
God.
It blew me completely. That's basically off my feet, and it was just dark and just blood everywhere, basically. I landed. As I woke up, there was a body. I was on top of a body which I thought was my son. And as I cleared all the debris away, I looked up and realized my son was standing there with a hole basically in his neck, shot. And, I basically went into father mode, as my other children said, dad mode. Took my shirt off, wrapped it around his neck to make sure that he wasn't bleeding more. And then he turned to me and said, "But Dad, you're splurting blood from everywhere. My arms, my back, my head." And I said, "Don't worry about me."
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Good morning and welcome to the Camilla Tominey Show with me, Tom Harwood. This week, putting the Tom in Tominey. Now, Parliament may be in recess, but politics hasn't paused. Here's what's coming up on today's programme. The Labour MP for Hales Owen, Alex Ballinger, joins me discussing the escalating tensions surrounding asylum seekers being housed in hotels. We'll also get his response to the rush of migrants who have arrived on small boats to the UK, the number that has for the first time topped 25,000 by August. Could it be a record year? Well, from the opposition benches, I'll speak to the Shadow Defence Minister, Mark Francois. I'll get his reaction to President Trump's decision to deploy 2 nuclear submarines following a row with the former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev. We'll also hear from Israel's Deputy Foreign Minister, Sharren Haskel, as Western countries, including the United Kingdom, move towards recognising a Palestinian state. Is Israel becoming increasingly isolated on the global stage? And we'll get expert analysis from Dr. Richard Johnson, Professor of US Politics at Queen Mary University of London, on Trump's recent trip to Scotland and what to expect from September's full state visit. And to wrap it all up, with GDP numbers going in the wrong direction, coupled with inflation now at an 18-month high, the Chancellor Rachel Reeves faces growing pressure to explain how she'll deliver growth in the autumn budget and whether tax rises are on the table. Well, the economist Catherine McBride will break down what it all means for all of us. It's a very busy show to come, so do stay tuned. Well, before we get to all of those interviews, I'm delighted that with me here to review the Sunday front pages is the chief political correspondent for The Times, Aubrey Allegretti. Aubrey, thanks for making your way in this Sunday morning. Shall we kick off with just some of these big migrant protests that we've seen over the weekend, some of the tension in the country clearly, but also what the government is announcing this weekend, perhaps to try and assuage some of that tension?
Absolutely. I mean, there's real concern because for the first time, the government's hit 25,000 migrants who have arrived by small boats at this sort of earliest point in the year. It's summer, the good weather is going to come back at the end of next week, so they're really concerned about more numbers of people coming over. And so we've heard a new announcement overnight from Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, who is effectively promising jail sentences of up to 5 years for anyone who promotes people smugglers' services on social media. There are some really interesting examples in the papers, actually, of platinum, silver, gold and bronze packages which are being offered by people smugglers, even with videos filmed which act as sort of reviews by migrants in the back of lorries and trucks. And so the announcement is designed to tackle that, to make it a criminal offence in order to be sort of advocating or advertising these packages.
And these packages are advertised on social media openly, on encrypted messaging channels as well. But I suppose the question here is, isn't aiding and abetting illegal immigration already illegal? And does the United Kingdom really have jurisdiction in some of these countries where the people smugglers operate from? Absolutely.
I mean, you've got to the nub of the problem, which is effectively the government is saying we need to tackle this downstream. It's not necessarily about what you do with the migrants when they get here. That is dealing with the problem almost before it's too late. You have to try and tackle the issue at source, stop people encouraging migrants to come here in the first place and selling these packages. I think reading the articles today, you do wonder why the government is tabling an amendment to its existing borders bill. Why has it taken this long to do this? As you said, it should already be an offence to aid and abet, illegal acts. So I think people will be wondering why it's taken so long to get here and to do this.
And that is a really important point. This isn't something that's long been in the works. This has been tacked on to the bill that was... How long has it been going through Parliament now? For quite some time, and they're already on the committee stage of this bill. I mean, it does seem like the government is sort of careering from option to option. We had the deal with France, we've had announcements on a potential turn back, but only for 1 out of every 17 migrants, and that hasn't even come into force yet. It does seem like the government is sort of scrambling around on all fronts here.
Well, they have to sort of make incremental and, if you like, sort of piecemeal progress. So take the deal with France, for example. It was announced, but then we're still waiting on sign-off from the European Union because, this was a bilateral deal between the UK and France, but it could set a precedent for a major EU country, which would have significant ramifications for countries like Italy, which would be unhappy at sort of more migrants being forced to stay in the countries that they would land in instead of moving onwards. I'm told that we could get an announcement as soon as next week about the approval from the EU, giving them the green light. So I think the government would say it's better to make some progress slowly than none at all and wait for it all to sort of come together.
But while this all happens, we're having a lot of social tension on the streets. I wonder if we can get up the pages 6 and 7 of the Express, which just shows some of these protests that have happened over the course of the last couple of days. Protests, it must be said, in both directions. But clearly, outside these migrant hotels, in areas with high illegal migration and those people awaiting asylum claims, real social tension.
Absolutely. We can see the sort of biggest picture there is a march held by Britain First in Manchester, and then on the right we've got pictures from a counter-protest outside the Thistle City Barbican Hotel in London, which is said to be housing some of the migrants. There's also potentially going to be some tensions because some migrants have been moved into a hotel that's been closely watched in Canary Wharf, the Britannia International Hotel, and that's been a source of sort of real tension, concerns about flare-ups, and locals effectively coming out to sort of demonstrate their opposition. But then, of course, there's been the counter-protests as well. There's lots of people quoted in the Mail on Sunday about why they've sort of turned up. But there is a concern about a summer of discontent. Luckily, it seems that only 9 people were arrested yesterday. 7 of those were for breaching Public Order Act conditions, so that's effectively how the police were trying to manage the protests. So this is still relatively small scale. We shouldn't inflame tensions or suggest that anything like what happened last summer is on the horizon. But there is concern in government. There have been cross-ministerial and civil service working groups set up to be able to try and respond to these things and dampen them down as quickly as possible rather than letting them escalate.
And clearly this is a big concern because we saw huge disruption, not necessarily to do with illegal migration, but in the wake of the Southport stabbings last summer. Thankfully, we haven't seen that scale of disruption yet this summer, but it does seem that there is a sort of boiling point being reached in so many parts of the country. I do want to move on to an argument seemingly behind the scenes in Number 10 over ID cards. The Observer picks this up today, and it does seem that the Chief of Staff in Downing Street, Morgan McSweeney, a name that has become very well known, I suppose, from people that follow politics, has really been pushing this idea of ID cards as a mean to clamp down on illegal migration.
There's been a real resistance to this. The usual quarters have sort of said that we shouldn't get into a papers, please society, but I think it's quite astute of the government to make this argument through the prism of tackling illegal migration and improving the delivery of public services. Now, we know that e-visas have been introduced. That's for basically any sort of foreigners who come to the UK and just travel through legal means. The government's also launched a digital driving licence, so there are almost sort of stealth forms of digital ID creeping in, which so far haven't raised many concerns.
But what I don't understand here is, why is this supposed to stop illegal migrations coming over? I mean, we know where these illegal migrants are. The government houses them. They're in hotels, they're in HMOs, across local communities. And when they do work illegally, it's not they're working for someone that requires an ID. I mean, they're sharing the accounts of delivery companies, for example. I'm not sure a digital ID would fix any of those points of that chain.
I think the argument is that it would certainly fix some, insofar as you'd be able to sort of track somebody as they move across the system and pop up wherever they may pop up.
But if they're using the official system, not if they're working in the black market.
No, exactly. And so, there'll be questions about how effective the strategy is overall. But I suppose this is being taken seriously. We've had outriders from, I think it's the Tony Blair Institute, which has written a report on the advice of Morgan McSweeney in Number 10, basically advocating for this idea. Is that outriders sort of trying to encourage the government to do this, to give them space to fly a kite, as it's known in Westminster? Yeah. I understand the project is being worked on seriously. I've even been told the code name that the Home Office is using for it, so they are trying to keep this under wraps while they explore the idea. Not saying that it's definitely going to happen, but yeah, there's a growing sort of number.
But you're
of
not going to reveal what that code word is.
I can't even remember it off the top of my head. It's so secret. But yeah, a number of papers have been covering this story for weeks. I suspect it's not in the immediate offing, but it will come.
And while the government is talking migration, the leader of the opposition has tried to move the topic of conversation to the economy. She's saying that Rachel Reeves risks another Liz Truss moment.
Absolutely. So, splashing the front of the Telegraph, we have an op-ed from Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative leader, in quite a daring and sort of bold attack on Labour, because it sort of half points the finger of blame at one of her predecessors, Liz Truss. Kemi Badenoch says, for all their mocking of Liz Truss, Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have not learnt the lessons of the mini-budget and are making even bigger mistakes. And she's effectively criticising the government for changing its fiscal rules at the start of, in fact, I think it was October, November last year, ahead of the budget, in order for Rachel Reeves to be able to borrow to invest for capital investment, infrastructure building.
With the catchy acronym PSNIFL. I think it was a public sector net debt liabilities or something like that.
It rolls off the tongue, doesn't it, all of these government acronyms. And so effectively she's saying that Labour is sort of putting loads of spending on the credit card, whereas in actual fact what Labour is doing is probably tapering off cuts towards the end of the Parliament. I think the Conservatives used to do this as well. They effectively, because the OBR, the Office for Budget Responsibility, operates on a 5-year horizon, so long as you can show that the cuts are going to happen somewhere during those 5 years, the OBR accepts it. And so normally they get weighted towards the end. Right. That always creates a sort of problem for, the Chancellor who's going to be there in 3, 4 or 5 years' time. And so the hope in government is always that growth will be better than expected, and then you won't need to make the size of the cuts.
And yet April's numbers, we saw negative growth, unexpectedly, much lower than was expected. Interestingly, in this piece, Kemi Badenoch also hits out against the Reform Party, calling them a left-wing party.
Yes, Kemi Badenoch, I think, still seems slightly divided about how to take on reform. Does she attack them directly? Does she go for them and criticise them on policy terms, on personality terms? Or does she ignore them, pretend that they don't exist and hope that she doesn't give sort of fuel to the fire? Because in a contest between her and Nigel Farage, Farage is pretty punchy. He's normally happy to sort of bite back, but she does aim a very small barb quite high up in the piece, where she says that Labour is being egged on by a left-wing Reform Party, I think pointing to analysis that basically says that Reform is suggesting it's going to make significant spending commitments without necessarily having the detailed spending cuts that would be needed to balance them out, which, as we know, is what was Liz Truss's downfall.
OK, well, Aubrey Allegretti, thanks for talking through those big stories today in the papers. Now, coming up, the Labour Member of Parliament, Alex Ballinger, joins me to respond to that growing protest scene that we've seen across the country surrounding asylum seekers being housed in hotels and, of course, those record-breaking number of illegal migrants crossing the English Channel. This is the Camilla Tominey Show, only on GB News.
I hope we haven't forgotten anything.
Travel insurance, I tick that box.
Yeah, but remember what you forgot last year.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. The heat is building across Portugal and Spain over the next few days. It's not as hot as it has been across the Eastern Med, and here it's a bit more changeable. We have got some fairly intense thundery downpours across parts of Italy and the Balkans, northern parts of Greece too. Elsewhere across Italy, Spain and Portugal, plenty of hot sunshine though, just a bit more in the way of cloud affecting Madeira and the Canary Islands, but generally dry and fine here. Lots of hot sunshine on the way through the next few days too, and temperatures in the 30s.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very good morning to you. This is the Camilla Tominey Show with me, Tom Harwood. Now, joining me is the Labour MP, Alex Ballinger, Labour MP for Hales-Owen. Alex, thanks so much for being with us in the studio. The government has big announcements this weekend, trying to crack down on illegal migration. But is going after people smugglers who advertise on TikTok really going to solve this problem?
Good morning, Tom, and thank you for having me. I think it's a really important part of tackling the overall illegal migration problem. So we've done a study of those migrants that are coming to the UK. 80% of them tell us that they've used social media to facilitate some part of that journey. So we do know it's a really important part of the people smugglers model. So our announcement, tacked on to the Border Security, Asylum and Immigration Bill, will allow the police to go after people that are using social media to advertise smuggling routes, and some of those videos on TikTok that you were talking about, go after people that promote illegal documentation, or to go after anyone who promotes illegal working opportunities. So tackling many of the models that the smuggling gangs are using that we expect will make a real difference on reducing illegal migration.
Why is this needed when it's already illegal to aid and abet the illegal people trafficking of people?
It is illegal, and we're using all the powers that we can, but this extra detail, the extra clarification will give the police the ability to go after people that are using social media. There's a lot of, I think, reluctance sometimes to go after people online. There's often, when I talk to my constituents, they complain that the police focuses online too much rather than focuses on crimes that are happening there and then in the constituency. So by putting this into law specifically, it will give the police that extra confidence to go after those people smugglers that we really want them to.
Is there a difficulty here? The government continually speaks about people smugglers as if the people coming across the channel have no agency themselves, as if they're sort of helpless in the process, that they're being trafficked by nefarious gangs, and if it only weren't for the gangs, these people wouldn't come across at all. When we know the reality is these people want to come across, they're going to find a way to come across, and as soon as you crack down on one gang, maybe you arrest the ringleader of one gang, there'll be another that comes along, because after all, it's the market demand, it's the demand from the people in those camps in Calais who want to come across. They're going to find a way. If they can get on a boat, they're going to find a way across.
It is really important to go after the gangs because they're facilitating the trade, and without the gangs there would be no one able to cross into the UK.
But the frustrating thing here is that these boats don't physically reach the beach in the UK. They haven't for the last couple of years. They make it halfway across the channel. So that halfway point, as soon as they're in UK waters, they're then escorted by Border Force vessels. People are picked up at sea, put on Border Force vessels, and they arrive at various docking points on the coastline. This isn't a problem of sort of tackling the legality of the problem is that we're dumping them in the United Kingdom rather than taking them back to France.
So as I said, it's important to tackle the gangs. We're also going after the incentives for people that are wanting to come to the UK for all those reasons that you just talked about, Tom. So part of the Border Security Bill includes measures against illegal working practices, tougher penalties for employers, tougher penalties for people advertising, and on top of this extra work that we're doing on social media, we're going to get rid of some of the advertising that encourages people to make those journeys. You also talked about foreign cooperation, and that is really important. So you will have heard about the deal we made with France a couple of weeks ago.
Which is still not implemented yet and still needs European exception.
It will be started to implement soon, and this will be the first time. I don't have a particular date. They're going through those negotiations to get it done as soon as possible. But as soon as we have that deal, we'll be having migrants being returned to France for the first time. That breaks the people smugglers model. That breaks the model of people that want to come here. If they have an opportunity when they arrive to be sent straight back to France, that's going to make them much less likely to want to pay that £12,000 to come to the UK.
It certainly does if you're returning most people. But on the latest numbers, you'd be returning just 5% of people. If someone's going to have a 95% chance of making it to the United Kingdom, they're still going to make that journey.
It's a pilot scheme, Tom. So we're going to start off small. If we can prove the concept, if it works for France, if it works for the UK, which we all expect it will, those numbers will increase. And the more that they increase, the more that deterrent will work. And frankly, it's a better deterrent than what the last government was offering in Rwanda, when only 4 people were returned after all those months and months.
Well, they would say that the scheme never got going and that those people were voluntary returns rather than the actual legal scheme starting.
They were voluntary returns. They couldn't even enforce any returns in the many months.
Yes, the scheme never got going. The issue here is that arrivals are 50% higher than last year. This is looking like it's going to be the highest number of illegal migrants across the Channel on record, or perhaps since 1016. 66. I mean, given that record, why should we believe what the government is saying now?
It is a disappointing number. We, of course, want to bring it down. But a lot of the measures that we're bringing into place are just starting to come into play now. That cooperation with France is being negotiated. That will happen soon. The border security bill, that will be made into law after the recess in the autumn. That will give those extra powers to police, those counter-terror powers that we were talking about to go after the smuggling gangs. They're cracking down on advertising. And then we've also got new agreements with Germany to go after the smuggling gangs, managing the logistics and the supply chain. And you might have heard that some of the work that the National Crime Agency is doing across the continent is now seizing more boats. So we seized 25 boats on the border between Bulgaria and Turkey only a few days ago. So it's a lot of this stuff is happening now or shortly, and that is when we'll
be able to see with those numbers if we do continue to see this surge, because as I say, it is currently the worst year that we have seen on record. I do want to move on though, because the Online Safety Act came into force just over a week ago. The elements of it that make that implement restrictions online for people under the age of 18 and for people over the age of 18, much content, some of it explicit, some of it not so explicit, including parliamentary speeches are now age restricted. Interestingly, over the weekend, we learn that a number of your colleagues have taken out VPNs, virtual private networks, on expenses before the Act came into force. But this has been criticised by the Technology Secretary, Peter Kyle, saying people are trying to get around the Act. The Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, put on expenses a virtual private network for 2 years, a subscription to this service. Why would he do that, spoofing his location to be in a different country, potentially getting around restrictions in this country?
So the Business Secretary has to make lots of trips to different places, including countries like China or other locations. And it's really important, if your data is not to be tracked by our adversaries, that we have the options to use VPNs when necessary. I don't know exactly why Jonathan might be using it, but that was a sort of circumstance that I've used it in the past when I've been on official trips.
So given that the Technology Secretary criticises people for using VPNs, but some of his colleagues use VPNs, what is the government's position on whether people should be able to use them?
I think this Act is about child protection. So the Online Safety Bill is about preventing children accessing extreme pornography.
But we have an unclear position on whether people should use virtual private networks or not.
I think we should be discouraging children from using virtual private networks.
OK, well, thank you.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. So Storm Floris is on the way for tomorrow, and that's going to bring some damaging winds to parts of the UK, especially in the north. And it is a fairly changeable day out there today as well. So a bit of a bright start across the far southeast. Do make the most of any morning sunshine because it won't last here. We have got some cloud and outbreaks of rain elsewhere across the UK, spreading its way slowly southeastwards. Still a few heavier bursts around across England and Wales this afternoon, but much of that rain petering out. And much brighter skies following to many parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England, so some sunny spells here and just the odd shower. Temperatures around average, but a pretty humid feel in the south, and that's all courtesy of that lingering front. So some outbreaks of rain and drizzle through this evening. Still relatively misty around some coasts of Devon and Cornwall and over the high ground as well, but any of the heavier rain should generally have died away by this point. Much brighter further north, so some evening sunshine for North Wales, Northern England, Northern Ireland and Scotland, and just one or two isolated showers here and there, but many places will have a dry end to the day. Just the odd heavier shower perhaps for northeast Scotland and maybe northeast England, with a small chance of a late afternoon thunderstorm. But a dry interlude for many through this evening and overnight. It's not going to last very long though, particularly for Northern Ireland. Here comes the wet weather associated with Storm Floris, so turning into a wet and windy night here. And for some other northwestern parts of the UK as well, we will see some rain by the morning. But a very mild and increasingly humid night out towards the west. Temperatures 16-17 degrees to begin the day for some of us. But it's those winds that we're most concerned about on Monday. So Storm Floris really intensifying, bringing some heavy rain but damaging gusts of wind across parts of Scotland in particular, but also Northern Ireland and Northern England. I think we'll probably see some power interruptions and some travel disruption across more northern parts of the UK on Monday, and a warning is in place, but also unseasonably windy in the south as well, with some rain arriving later in the day.
Let us take on some of your financial stresses and pay your mortgage or rent for the next 12 months. We want to give you a cash lump sum equivalent to 12 of your monthly mortgage or rent payments, up to an unbelievable £20,000. We'll also boost that by a further £5,000, so you really could have some fun in the coming year. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB15 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 29th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
27 now. Heaven, Health and Beauty in Shropshire is celebrating the official unveiling of their royal warrant today.
Well, it's been recognised as the supplier of skincare products and treatments to Her Majesty the Queen after she first used the company's products 19 years ago. She's a loyal customer.
She is a loyal customer. Jack Carson has been getting the treatment.
I was just like, I wish my mum was here to see this.
There's a beaming smile on the face of Heaven, Health and Beauty founder Deborah Mitchell as she celebrates the unveiling of their royal warrant. Starting her business with £10 in her pocket in 1995, Deborah says she's worked from the ground up and started providing skincare treatments to Her Majesty the Queen 19 years ago. Today she says she's honoured to be a recipient of a royal warrant.
It is a feeling that you cannot explain, but I was very lucky before having the royal warrant when Camilla Parker Bowles was Camilla Parker Bowles, and I didn't tell anybody I did her treatments. It hit in the press, and then this product, which is the bee venom made from bees, makes the skin look younger using a Botox alternative.
The King and Queen have granted royal warrants to almost 400 companies that supply the royal household, with each one lasting up to 5 years. It also means those companies can display the royal arms on their products. Director and daughter of Deborah, Ella Mitchell, makes this business a family affair, and she's made sure the packaging is already getting a fresh look. Ella says she's proud the products are made in Britain.
The achievement itself, you feel proud to be British, and I think that's one of the core values of us.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock and welcome back to the Camilla Tominey Show on GB News with me, Tom Harwood, putting the Tom in Tominey. Now, lots more still to come on the programme. Indeed, we'll hear from the Shadow Defence Minister, Mark Francois, with his view on the growing international tensions sparked by Donald Trump's deployment of 2 nuclear submarines amid rising tensions with Russia. Elsewhere, Israel's Deputy Foreign Minister Sharren Haskel will also join me as pressure grows over Palestinian state recognition. And Dr. Richard Johnson from Queen Mary University of London will provide expert analysis and insight into Donald Trump's nuclear submarine remarks and the escalating rhetoric with Russia. And Catherine McBride will be here to break down the state of the British economy, all ahead of the Chancellor Rachel Reeves's potentially tax-raising budget in autumn. But before all of that, it's your very latest news headlines with Bethany Elsey.
Tom, thank you. Good morning. Your top stories from the GB newsroom at 10 o'clock. Anyone who advertises small boat crossings or fake passports on social media could face up to 5 years in prison under government plans to tackle illegal immigration. Ministers are under growing pressure after the number of migrants reaching the UK this year has surpassed 25,000. Home Office figures reveal around 80% of those told officials they used social media during their journey, including to contact agents of smuggling gangs. The National Crime Agency says 8 1,000 posts promoting immigration crime were taken offline last year, but the proposed new law aims to give police more powers. The BBC has launched an investigation into alleged cocaine use by 2 stars of Strictly Come Dancing. The claims were first reported by The Sun on Sunday. It's understood the broadcaster has hired an external law firm to investigate the allegations, which a source said were well known on the show. A spokesperson says the BBC has clear protocols and policies in place for dealing with any serious complaint. Up to 300 children could be evacuated from Gaza and brought to the UK for treatment on the NHS. The Sunday Times reports the plans are set to be announced within weeks. A parent or guardian will accompany each child, as well as siblings if necessary. Last week, Sir Keir Starmer said the UK is urgently accelerating efforts to bring children over for urgent healthcare. UNICEF estimates more than 50,000 children have been killed or injured in Gaza since October 2023. Rescue teams in Chile searching for 5 trapped miners have discovered a body. The remaining 4 workers are still missing under some 300 feet of rock at the world's largest underground copper mine in the Andes Mountains. A section of the mine collapsed on Thursday following a strong 4.2 magnitude tremor. It's unclear if it was caused by mining activity or natural tectonic shifts. Rescuers have vowed to continue their search until they are all found. And the family of a young mother who was shot in her home are appealing for information 20 years on from a murder. 22-year-old Lucy Hargreaves was asleep on the sofa when 3 men broke into a home in Liverpool and killed her. They then set fire to the house on Lambourne Road in Walton. Her partner and 2-year-old daughter were upstairs and had to escape through a window. Police arrested 21 people as part of their investigations, but no one has yet been convicted. Anyone with information should contact Merseyside Police. You're up to date. I'll have more for you in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Bethany. Now let's dive straight back into the politics. Joining me now is Mark Francois, MP, the Shadow Defence Minister. Mark, thanks so much for being with us this morning. I just want to start off with what's been happening with regard to the United States President and the former President of Russia, a war of words and the deployment of 2 nuclear submarines. Should we be worried?
Well, Medvedev is sort of Vladimir Putin's social media attack dog, if you like. And he's made a number of inflammatory comments. And Putin himself has used, should we say, nuclear rhetoric multiple times since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, none of which has led to anything. But nonetheless, I think the president is right. He's refused, if you like, to be cyberbullied. And so he's instructed 2 American submarines. We don't know if they're attack submarines or ballistic missile submarines, and we don't know where he's moved them from and to. But he's sending a signal, I think, to Putin that he's not going to be intimidated on behalf of the West, and I think he's right. It's very important, Tom, to remember who we're dealing with here. Vladimir Putin is a former KGB colonel. He's not mad, but he's utterly ruthless. This man's not a Boy Scout. This is a man who's deliberately given orders, to send cruise missiles to target children's hospitals. So that's what we're dealing with. But I hope Trump is now beginning to see Putin for what he is. The 2 men seem to have some sort of previous relationship, but Trump now, in some of his most recent comments, has said things like, I had a good conversation with President Putin yesterday, and then overnight he attacked a hospital. Why did he do that?
Yeah.
So I hope Trump
Mark,
is
some people will be concerned, given that Donald Trump sort of stood to be president on the platform of peace. He was going to be the great peacemaker, friends with everyone. And there's a significant proportion of his base that was really hoping that there wouldn't be escalatory rhetoric. And now, given the tensions around the world, given all it takes is one powerful man with a finger on a red button somewhere, are we heading for somewhere dangerous?
Well, I think the escalatory rhetoric has come from Russia. They are the ones that invaded the peaceful nation of Ukraine. So I think it's quite right to stand up to them. The Ukrainians are, in effect, fighting for our freedom too now. That's what it boils down to. That's why in the Conservative Party, if I may, we absolutely back the Ukrainians to the hilt. And if Trump now imposes further sanctions, which I hope he will, that's the best way of getting the message across. At the risk of generalising for a nation of 140 million people, Russians admire strength and despise weakness. If you want
Mark,
to
we're short on
Putin's
time, so we must get from one invasion to what some describe as another. What do you make of the government's most recent announcement to crack down on people smugglers, given, of course, illegal migration is now 50% higher than it was last year?
Yes, and as you said earlier, Tom, you know, we've now hit 25,000 and we're only in early August. Look, I watched Alex Ballinger's interview. The fascinating thing was what he didn't say. And he didn't mention that the government have announced this weekend they're going to try and massively speed up the process of asylum claims. The problem with that is it will act as a gigantic pull factor. At the moment, about half of all asylum claims are granted. So if you let the word get round, you know, all those camps in northern France, or the British government are going to process asylum claims, quotes, within weeks, more and more people will attempt the journey if they think they've got a 50% chance of getting asylum if they can get across the channel, the busiest shipping lane in the world. So this is not thought through. They said they would smash the gangs. They palpably haven't. That this ridiculous scheme of 17 in, 1 out that was announced a few weeks ago is a total gimmick. Labour have no plan whatsoever to stop the boats, and that's a tragedy because the boats will keep coming, we'll need more asylum hotels, and there'll be more and more social unrest as a result. So this is all tinkering. The truth is they haven't got a clue what they're doing. And the boats will keep coming and people will get angrier and angrier about it.
And Mark, clearly people are angry. We've seen that in protests around the country. But they're angry because they've continually voted for politicians who've continually said that they will fix this issue. Politicians on both sides of the House of Commons. We were expecting the last government to fix this. Rishi Sunak made it one of his top 5 priorities to fix it, and the problem kept getting worse. Yes, one year it went down, the numbers were cut by 1/3, but the next year they were back up again. And this year, under a new government, they're even higher still. So how on earth are we to trust any of the politicians on this?
Tom, I understand your point. If you remember, we had the Rwanda plan. Now, some people liked it and some people didn't, but it's one more plan than Labour have got. And it was beginning to work. How do we know that? Because you had a period when the government of the Republic of Ireland were beginning to complain bitterly about the number of cross-channel migrants that were coming from Northern Ireland into the Republic because they were frightened of being sent to Rwanda. So
how does that work when the numbers coming across the channel were rising by the time of the general election again? Yes, for a time, those numbers went down, but we had a surge in migrant crossings in 2024. So how does that square with the Rwanda programme working before it was even implemented?
Well, because, as it were, it was always meant to be a deterrent. And my point was, in fact, I think I remember you reporting on it at the time, you know, you can prove that deterrent effect was beginning to work. Should we have done it quicker? Yes. You know, should we have made further progress on it? Yes. And then there was an election and we ran out of time. And Labour junked it, I think, in a fit of pique, but without any replacement idea at all. That they had this nascent thing with Albania, where Starmer was humiliated by the Albanian Prime Minister in a press conference when he said they got a deal, and the Albanian Prime Minister contradicted him live on air. So my point is, we had a plan. It was beginning to work. Labour have no plan at all, and saying they're going to speed up the processing of asylum claims will actually make it worse because it will encourage more migrants to chance their arm and come. I mean, that's a very simple sort of, you know, way to work it out. If you say will speed up your claim. If you try and get to Britain and claim asylum, more people will come. And remember...
And yet, Mark, it used to be the case that asylum claims were heard within a week or two. And if they were heard within a week or two, someone would only stay in temporary accommodation for a week or two. If they were rejected, then they'd be kicked out of the country. If they were accepted, well, then they could go off and find work and earn for themselves. But because we have these 2-year waits in some cases for people to hear their asylum claim, isn't that a bad thing that these people are stuck, prevented from working and earning, but also at taxpayers' expense in a air-conditioned hotel over the summer months, not having to worry about their heating bill in the winter months, all on the taxpayer? I mean, isn't it a worse situation that these people are languishing for years in some cases before their case is heard?
Well, as you know, Tom, some of those people remain in those hotels and some of them abscond. You know, they are not locked up in those hotels. They're not secure in that sense. Some of them just disappear.
Some of them enjoy the taxpayer-funded hospitality.
Yeah, Tom, we need to do something about this. We must do something about it. One thing the previous government did do, and I'm not saying our record on this is perfect, but one thing the previous government did too, which I think was important, was we changed the law so that any migrant crossing the Channel could not achieve asylum. So, you know, to say, don't bother because you won't get it. Labour have since overturned that on, quotes, human rights grounds.
Yeah.
So they are actually, by their actions, facilitating more people coming. And the inevitable consequence of that, you know, the knock-on down the line is you will get more of these hotels and more social unrest, which I don't...
It's an important point to make, Mark.
That's what's likely to happen. So
now you mentioned that on human rights grounds, the government has scrapped that part of the Illegal Migration Act. There's another Act of Parliament that is being scrapped on human rights grounds, and that's the Northern Ireland Legacy Act. I know you've been campaigning on this for quite some time. Could you just break down exactly what the government's trying to do here and how it might put some British veterans at risk?
Yes, I mean, this is a government completely obsessed with the Human Rights Act. The Prime Minister is a human rights lawyer. The Attorney General is a human rights lawyer. Hilary Benn, the Northern Ireland Secretary, is a passionate, quotes, defender of the Human Rights Act. So let me boil this right down for brevity. The government are trying to pass something through Parliament called a remedial order. That would have two effects. One, it would reopen our Northern Ireland veterans to this endless cycle of investigation and reinvestigation. And at the same time, the same order would make it easier for Gerry Adams to sue the British taxpayer and hundreds of his so-called associates. So that's why the veterans came up with a petition. It's got nearly 188,000 signatures. This could all result, Tom, in a crunch vote in Parliament sometime in the autumn. So if I can make a plea to your viewers, if they want to defend our Northern Ireland veterans, to defend those who defended us against terrorism, please go on the Parliament website, follow the prompts, sign the petition. That will really make a difference, because if it comes to a crunch vote, we've got to persuade those Labour MPs not to vote, to do down our veterans and do Gerry Adams a favour. So this really matters, and every one of your viewers can play their part.
And yet, Mark, haven't the courts found against parts of this Act, of the Legacy Act? How does the government go forward when clearly the courts say that this is incompatible with the Human Rights Act or indeed membership of the ECHR?
Well, let's get into the detail of it. The Human Rights Act, the rulings against them were in the lower courts, most of them in Northern Ireland. The government could have applied to the Supreme Court for a definitive decision, but they didn't. And when we had a debate in Westminster Hall on the 14th of July, brought about by people signing the petition, but the petition's still open, I challenged Ben. I said, why didn't you apply to the Supreme Court? Why didn't you appeal? And he blurted out rather petulantly, because we didn't want to. And that's a complete giveaway. So this government, obsessed with the Human Rights Act, and I use the word deliberately, is prepared to throw Northern Ireland veterans to the wolves whilst doing Gerry Adams a favour. They could have appealed to the UK Supreme Court, and they deliberately deliberately did not. That was a conscious decision by an incoming Labour government.
OK, well, we'll follow that progress through Parliament in autumn with great interest. But for now, Mark Francois, Shadow Defence Minister, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you, Tom.
Now, still to come on the programme, Israel's Deputy Foreign Minister Sharren Haskel joins us to respond to the growing support for Palestinian statehood across the West. First France, next the United Kingdom, now Canada. What on earth is going to happen? Well, this is the Camilla Tominey Show, only on GB News.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've read the headlines, you've heard what those in power have to say. How about now we actually get to the truth?
They would pay attention.
We go beyond the political theatre and tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. For a massive council tax hike, one of the biggest in the UK. Others follow their lines, but we go off script.
You sound like a broken record, you say that week after week.
Cutting through the narratives and giving you unique perspectives. That's Ben Leo tonight, Saturdays and Sundays from 9 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Very good morning to you. This is the Camilla Tominey Show, this week with me, Tom Harwood. Now, joining me now is Sharren Haskel, the Deputy Foreign Minister of Israel. Sharren, thanks so much for being with us this morning. Firstly, I want to ask what the Israeli response is to the growing coalition of G7 countries that are saying that a state of Israel should be, a state of Palestine, I apologise, should be recognised if Israel doesn't commit to various commitments?
Well, I think that, Hamas's celebrations are quite defining, our reaction and what the world's reaction should be. Hamas is actually literally thanking the UK government for recognizing a Palestinian state. There's a huge problem when a proscribed terrorist organization is thanking your own government. Just yesterday, we saw an interview of the leader of Hamas, Ramzi, that says very clearly that those recognitions were the fruit of the 7th of October. And I want to ask you, how comfortable do you feel with your government rewarding a terrorist organization for the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust with a state?
It is a pertinent question. Of course, it has been British foreign policy for quite some time to support a two-state solution. But of course, up until now, the way in which that would be supported was that a Palestinian state wouldn't be recognised until the latter stages of negotiations. I suppose the position from the British government at the moment is that a two-state solution seems further away than ever. And even Israel, the sort of leadership of Israel, seems to now not be talking about supporting a two-state solution. What is the position of Israel when it comes to whether or not there should be two states?
Do you think that we can agree to a state where a terrorist organization who created the worst crimes against humanity, against our people, raping little girls, burning alive our grandparents, beheading and executing our family members, can we give this terrorist organization a state? I mean, that shouldn't even be a question. It's ridiculous. And when the European countries or those countries, throughout the year have stated they will declare a Palestinian state on certain conditions, whether it's elections or being liberated of terrorist organization, maybe even just releasing the hostages who are being starved, abused physically, emotionally in Gaza, maybe even that. But no, all of these demands that you could hear throughout the years have gone out the window. They sold out their values and any kind of principle and are just handing that out now to them as a gift. And as a gift of what? Of one of the worst terrorist acts they committed? What do you think that will teach other terrorist organizations, whether it's in the Middle East, Africa, or Europe, on how European governments react to terrorist actions and how they are being rewarded for it?
It's a very strong point. The moral hazard of this is clear for all to see. Is this going to encourage more terrorism? A really pertinent question. What the government has said here is that they would not accept a Palestinian state that had Hamas, that had anything to do with it, that they wouldn't want Hamas being in any form of authority in that state. Do you believe that's possible? And how could that be achieved?
Look, I want to point out maybe something a little bit outside of Israel that the mainstream media didn't even talk about, where the worst mass humanitarian disaster are right now happening in Sudan, in South Sudan, where children are literally being left on the side of the road because of starvation, where millions of people were displaced, many killed, more than the entire population of the Palestinian people were executed, murdered because of this conflict in South Sudan and Sudan. And still many governments refuse to have relationships or are boycotting the South Sudanese government because they want them to have elections. So, on a contrast to the hypocrisy of the world in regards to Israel, they're not even saying that they're going to hand out or declare a Palestinian state if there will be elections. And what do you think? You know why they're not asking for elections in a Palestinian Authority? In regards to whatever they request from other nations and from other countries, it is because your government and Keir Starmer do know that if there's elections tomorrow in the Palestinian Authority, it is Hamas that will rise into power. So you tell me, how do we avoid a declaration of a state without a terrorist organization heading that state? Now, your government know that. I'm sorry, we cannot...
That is a desperate situation. I want to follow you down that path of logic. Given your belief and perhaps the reality that Hamas is more popular than we would like it to be, that Hamas, the ghastly terrorist organisation that in its charter until recently wanted to wipe every Jew from the face of the earth. If it is true that Hamas would win elections both in Gaza and in the West Bank across what multiple countries now want to recognise as Palestine, how can Israel go about its foreign policy with any sort of... I'm trying to follow your logic here. Is your logic that there is no Palestinian state that can ever exist because Hamas or something like it will always be elected in these territories? Is that what you're saying?
So I'm saying two things. The one thing is that the idea or the experiment of the Palestinian state happened. We disengaged in 2005, giving Gaza to the Palestinians to have their own autonomy, their own independence. They couldn't run and manage their own life. But instead of building a Singapore or a Hong Kong, they elected democratically a terrorist organization that have been radicalizing the people for the last 20 years, using all the resource, all the humanitarian aid, all the money that's been invested there into terrorism, building underground...
Palestinian activists say that Hamas never won a majority.
Well, I would look on the facts and on the elections that happen in Gaza, and they... If I look on the reality,
not a majority.
On the reality, on the elections, on pollings that are happening by the Palestinians, the Americans, the Israelis, you look on all the intelligence information, the facts, the science, not the emotion, but the facts, and it will be given to you.
So then what is Israel trying to achieve then? It's
very simple.
If the Palestinian people will always elect a Hamas, but you're trying to wipe Hamas from the face of the earth, what does victory look like in Gaza? When will this ghastly war end?
Well, you know, it's very simple. When Hamas disarms itself and when the hostages are back home, that's when this conflict ends. It could have ended yesterday, it could have ended a year ago, and it could have never started as we place that, you know, as a statement to the Palestinians from the beginning of the war, that there won't be a single soldier in Gaza if they hand out our hostages and if Hamas disarm. But they refused. And so what we need to do is very simple. We need, first of all, to bring our hostages back home and to make sure that Hamas doesn't hold any military power or civilian power in the area. Look, it's very similar to the fight against ISIS. Does ISIS in radical pockets still exist? Yeah, but the civilian power it had was taken away from him. The military organized power they have was destroyed. And so you put them as small as possible to take them away from power, because if they maintain power, they will continue to radicalize the next generation of Palestinians again. How is it so easy for Hamas to recruit people from the Palestinian population? Because it educated them to hatred, to violence, and to martyrdom.
And just very briefly, I take it that Israel won't be following the British demands for a ceasefire and for unlimited aid trucks into Gaza in order to stop Britain's recognition of Palestine. That's what the Prime Minister has said, that if Israel commits to that ceasefire in those conditions, this recognition will not happen at the UN General Assembly in September.
So, look, the first thing I want to say is that obviously your government is more worried about losing votes to Jeremy Corbyn and Muslim independence than they are in supporting a key ally in the Middle East and the only democracy in the region. In regards to the humanitarian aid, look, there are right now, last week, a month ago, hundreds of loads of trucks just waiting inside Gaza for the international community to distribute that. Unfortunately, the United Nations decided to turn the humanitarian issue into a political issue and not a humanitarian issue. And so when they are collaborating with Hamas, trying to demand that Hamas will be the sole and only distributor of humanitarian aid, it's absolutely unacceptable. If they want, they can send thousands of trucks now inside Gaza to take it and distribute that. We've published the images We've published video of those goods that are already there. And we've assisted through airdrops where Israel, the Jordanians, the Germans have been dropping aid from the air because the United Nations is failing their own mission.
So as things stand, it looks like the United Kingdom will be recognising a Palestinian state in September. Big goings on there at the United Nations. For now, Sharren Haskel, thank you very much for joining us, Deputy Foreign Minister of Israel. I really appreciate your time. Now, still coming up, Dr. Richard Johnson will join me to discuss Donald Trump's visit to the United Kingdom, both last week, but also his visit coming up in September. What does this mean for the United Kingdom and the United States? Is this relationship on good terms? Well, this is the Camilla Tominey Show, only on GB News.
Good morning and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. So Storm Floris is on the way for tomorrow, and that's going to bring some damaging winds to parts of the UK, especially in the north. And it is a fairly changeable day out there today as well. So a bit of a bright start across the far southeast. Do make the most of any morning sunshine because it won't last here. We have got some cloud and outbreaks of rain elsewhere across the UK, spreading its way slowly southeastwards. Still a few heavier bursts around across England and Wales this afternoon, but much of that rain petering out. And much brighter skies following to many parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England, so some sunny spells here and just the odd shower. Temperatures around average, but a pretty humid feel in the south, and that's all courtesy of that lingering front, so some outbreaks of rain and drizzle through this evening. Still relatively misty around some coasts of Devon and Cornwall and over the higher ground as well, but any of the heavier rain should generally have died away by this point. Much brighter further north, so some evening sunshine for North Wales, Northern England, Northern Ireland and Scotland, and just one or two isolated showers here and there, but many places will have a dry end to the day. Just the odd heavier shower perhaps for northeast Scotland and maybe northeast England, with a small chance of a late afternoon thunderstorm. But a dry interlude for many through this evening and overnight. It's not going to last very long though, particularly for Northern Ireland. Here comes the wet weather associated with Storm Floris, so turning into a wet and windy night here. And for some other northwestern parts of the UK as well, we will see some rain by the morning. But a very mild and increasingly humid night out towards the west. Temperatures 16-17 degrees to begin the day for some of us. But it's those winds that we're most concerned about on Monday. So Storm Floris really intensifying, bringing some heavy rain but damaging gusts of wind across parts of Scotland in particular, but also Northern Ireland and Northern England. I think we'll probably see some power interruptions and some travel disruption across more northern parts of the UK on Monday, and a warning is in place, but also unseasonably windy in the south as well, with some rain arriving later in the day.
Britain was once the envy of the world, but look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. This is the Camilla Tominey Show. Now, joining me is Dr. Richard Johnson, the Professor of US Politics at Queen Mary University of London. Richard, thanks so much for being with us this morning. Donald Trump is making quite a habit of coming to the United Kingdom. He opened a new golf course up in Scotland just a few days ago, but he's going to be back in September. What is the politics behind this yo-yoing of a couple of visits?
Well, of course, Donald Trump has a very long history of visits to the United Kingdom, going way back before he became President of the United States, because he is the son of a British citizen. He is half Scottish. He is the first US president to have a British-born parent since Woodrow Wilson, whose mother was from Carlisle. And Trump has had long-standing business engagements here. I mean, it's a curious but very typical aspect of the Trump presidency that he is combining what was meant to be, or was initially billed as a personal holiday to one of his golf courses to cut a ribbon, as a major aspect of American statecraft, both vis-a-vis the UK government and the EU, getting both the President of the European Commission and the British Prime Minister to go to his hotel to meet with him on British soil to finalise these trade agreements.
Yeah, I mean, what a moment of theatre that was in his magnificent ballroom that he had himself built up there in Turnberry. First to have Ursula von der Leyen come to visit him, almost in his sort of palatial surroundings, to sign a trade deal that means 0 tariffs on American goods going to Europe, but 15% tariffs on European goods going to America. I mean, he really is showing the Europeans that he is a hard negotiator. I wonder if the British lulled the Europeans into a false sense of security with Brexit negotiations, and now they've actually met a hard baller. They don't know what hit them.
I think those are really good points, Tom. I mean, first is that this negotiation was classic Trump. Trump goes in really, really tough. He sets what seem to be almost kind of totally unreasonable demands, and then reaches a less unreasonable final point. Yeah, I was thinking during this week about an interview that his late first wife, Ivana Trump, gave, where she talked about her divorce with Donald Trump. And she said the months where they were going through the divorce were really, really awful, horrible. You know, he just went as hard as he could in the divorce. She said, then once we signed the agreement, he was brilliant to me, and we became best of friends, and we spoke on the phone every week for the rest of what turned out to be her life. And you can sort of see that this is how he used to do business deals, divorce settlements, is how he also conducts international trade. And on your second point about the Brexit negotiations, I mean, absolutely, I was thinking the same thing, that when we went into our negotiations with the EU, we took some of our biggest bargaining chips off the table at the start. We said we were not going to talk about EU citizens, we were not going to talk about defence, we were not going to talk about the Irish border, we were going to concede all of those to the EU position at the very start. And that's absolutely opposite of what Donald Trump would do in that kind of negotiation.
Absolutely. I remember those years well. The sequencing that we agreed to. We weren't going to possibly talk terms of trade until we'd agreed all of the backstop stuff that the European Union wanted to lock Britain into. They've met a very, very different negotiation partner. But there is a question mark here in terms of Britain in September. We've just been speaking to a representative of the Israeli government, and we know that Donald Trump has, by surprise, imposed extra tariffs on Canada, far higher than they were expecting in the last couple of days. This follows Canada saying it will recognise a Palestinian state at the United Nations at the same time that Britain has committed to doing so. We know that Donald Trump is very happy with tearing up deals that he himself has signed. He tore up the USMCA agreement between the US, Mexico and Canada that he signed in his first term. Could we see a risk here with Britain in recognising a Palestinian state in September that incites the ire of Donald Trump and imposes further extra tariffs on the United Kingdom?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, to the credit of the UK government, they've recognised that Trump does have this certain affection for the UK. He also, Trump wants to show, for political reasons and ideological reasons, that Brexit works. So, he has established a differential in terms of the UK-US trade relationship and the EU-US trade relationship. And the UK government has gone along with that, hasn't pushed against that, and has adopted effectively a kind of a flattery strategy when it comes to Trump. And this second state visit of his two-term presidency is part of that. But the truth about Donald Trump is that he is inconstant in his affections, and he can change his viewpoint and his attitude towards you quite quickly. And there is, I think, a risk that if the UK government pushes too much against Trump on some of these issues, that he may stop showing such kind of preferential treatment to the UK. At the moment, we haven't seen the signs of that, and his focus is trying to get a better deal with Canada, basically, which is what he's doing here. But, you know, further down the road, perhaps we could see some friction.
Now, just finally, we have seen the president deploy 2 nuclear submarines, or at least he says he has, off the back of a row with the former Russian President Medvedev. Obviously, Donald Trump got elected on a platform of peace, on a platform of pacifism, perhaps the most pacifist US president in living memory. And yet now we see him sort of turning about on this issue of Russia. Should we be concerned?
Well, actually, I think some of this is tied in a certain way to the trade negotiations that went on over the last few weeks, because ultimately, you know, the EU didn't push back. I mean, the lesson of this from Trump was basically he talked tough, and no one really pushed back against him. The exception is perhaps China. And of course, China is not an ally of the United States, but Trump's allies didn't push back, and the Europeans didn't push back. And one of the reasons why the Europeans didn't push back was not just about the economic consequences of high tariffs to the United States, but because the United States still has this ultimate trump card that Europe is still very dependent on the US security umbrella. And I think part of what Trump is doing, okay, maybe the Medvedev spat was the casus belli for this in a way, but actually I think this is Trump showing to the Europeans that actually you still depend on us, you still need us for your security, and unless and until Europe is prepared to take charge of their own defense, then the United States will use this, at least under Trump, as a bargaining tool for economic leverage as well.
Interesting stuff. Well, Dr. Richard Johnson, thanks indeed for joining us, Professor of US Politics at Queen Mary University of London. Well, still to come, Catherine McBride, the economist, joins me for her take on all the latest economic data, the big choices facing Chancellor Rachel Reeves in just over a month's time. Will taxes have to go up, and where? Well, this is the Camilla Tominey Show, only on GB News.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. The heat is building across Portugal and Spain over the next few days. It's not as hot as it has been across the Eastern Med, and here it's a bit more changeable. We have got some fairly intense thundery downpours across parts of Italy and the Balkans, northern parts of Greece too. Elsewhere across Italy, Spain and Portugal, plenty of hot sunshine though, just a bit more in the way of cloud affecting Madeira and the Canary Islands, but generally dry and fine here. Lots of hot sunshine on the way for the next few days too, and temperatures in the 30s.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Oh, yes, I've got a bit of an update on this. So, you know, Steve Jobs' daughter is getting married this weekend. We talked about it earlier on in the week.
Yes,
Eve Jobs.
They're hiring the entire Cotswolds.
Yeah, we've got more details now.
Oh.
They're taking over the village of Great Chew. And apparently the budget is said to be $5 million. Could be a lot more, though.
$5 million?
Yeah,
because the papers were saying 50 million the other day.
$5 million. Could be higher.
For them.
But the high-end guest list includes Kamala Harris, Bono, the Kardashians and Princess Beatrice. Rumours as well that David Cameron's been invited.
Oh. But they can't know all these people.
They've invited 500 people. So it's a big wedding.
It's just like...
Apparently the village is in lockdown.
No, it will be.
Yeah, and they're going to Estelle Manor afterwards, which is a big, like, Jacobean manor house in the Cotswolds. And they've got sniffer dogs out already.
Wow.
It's incredible.
Of all those people, I bet they only know Bono.
But didn't you think the
Everybody
same
knows Bono, don't they? Well, no, but at least he was involved with Apple. He must have known Steve Jobs. Was he involved with Apple? Yeah, because they had all the... Do you remember they had the U2 exclusive iPods and things
of course, yeah.
So he must have known... So he probably knew her as a kid.
Yeah.
I wonder if they're going to give away Apple products.
Probably.
Oh, yeah. You know, the
goodie bag. You'll get a goodie bag.
At the end, yeah, like an iPad or
So you've got a goodie bag at your wedding.
Or a MacBook. I know, but you had the free-flowing rosé, which you don't drink.
I don't drink.
Anyway. Did you not try the non-alcoholic version?
Of rosé?
Yeah.
I didn't know there was one.
I covered all fronts.
I didn't know there was one.
Oh, well, you missed out.
I had some non-alcoholic beers.
Well, good. I did provide.
GB News, the People's Channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the Camilla Tominey Show. Now, joining me is the economist, the independent economist, Catherine McBride. I must say, before we get to Catherine, let's have a quick look at a television advert that has been produced by a cryptocurrency platform. I'll explain why after we see this.
We ain't got no troubles, no reason to complain. 'Cause here in great old Britain, we just love it when it rains.
Morning.
We're cosy here at home, even though it's not our own. But wait a few more years and who can say? Everything is just fine. Everything is grand. Your life can get no better when you're living by the letter in this pleasant land.
Yeah, that's an advert basically explaining how everything is broken and why we should buy this particular product, because everything seems broken in Britain. Catherine, just how broken is the economy?
Well, I don't think it's that bad, though there will be areas. There was a time when there was a garbage strike in Birmingham. There are areas
Still
in Britain
going on.
where there are problems like that. In London, you don't notice that so much, but everyone is looking to the future in London. And we are, as even people like Ray Dalio, who doesn't even live in Britain, is saying we're in a doom loop, and the IMF is saying the same thing, because we're taxing the instruments of wealth creation. And so businesses, there's another survey out this week saying business sentiment has dropped to its all-time low since they started doing this survey. And if a business has no confidence in the UK, they won't invest here. They won't hire more people. They won't expand at all. And if they don't expand, then the Treasury gets less money. The same with the wealthy people. If you drive the non-doms, not just the non-doms, if you drive British high net worth individuals are also leaving. So if you drive them out of the country, you've got less people to pay the tax.
Well, we only showed a short clip of that advert. There is actually a moment in it where you see a couple driving a fancy car just saying, we're going off to Dubai.
Yeah.
And I wonder if advertising executives have found that this is something to tap into the general feeling out there in the country, that nothing works, that everything is broken, that taxes are sky high, that the energy prices are so great that the lights flicker on and off sometimes. I mean, to what extent is Britain just in this market doom loop, this sense of decline?
Well, there is also this tragedy of a deindustrialisation, which has been going on very rapidly in the last few years. So we've got 2 oil refineries have closed. The steel works at Port Talbot was closed. The one in Scunthorpe is only open because the government has nationalised it effectively.
Yeah. And therefore it's an inefficient plant and it's not making any money. I want to ask, what does this mean for the budget? We're expecting a big budget from Rachel Reeves in the autumn. I mean, it's going to have to raise taxes.
Well, Rachel Reeves should be as sensible as every other person in the country. Everyone knows that when you have a debt problem, the first thing you do is cut spending, because that's the easiest, quickest thing to do. And then you look at getting a new job and making more money. So she's got to look at how she's going to make more money. But
she tried to cut spending, and the Labour backbenchers basically cut her route off for that.
Well, then you don't have to cut welfare spending, though you should look at it, because there's all of these stories in the press about how people with ADHD or something have got themselves a car out of the government. And it's like, well, ADHD is not a mobility issue.
No. Amazingly, some alcoholics have been given free cars, which seems just extraordinary.
The worst one I heard is someone with tennis elbow.
Wow.
And it's like, well, sorry, like what? But take a taxi. But there is waste in the welfare budget. I won't pretend there isn't. But there are other areas we should be cutting. I mean, if the NHS needs more money, let's start getting rid of some of the administrators. Let's start looking at the DEI people employed by the
sadly,
NHS.
Catherine, you are not in number 11 Downing Street. Perhaps the country would be much better off if you were. What do we expect the Chancellor will tax?
Well, everyone is talking about a wealth tax, but we already have wealth taxes. First, we have capital gains tax. You have to be relatively wealthy to have the ability to get a capital gains. We also have a tax on when you buy houses. Almost everyone I know, especially your age, if they're looking to buy their first house or looking to go to a family house, they want to get married and have children, they're all discovering they've got this massive stamp duty to pay. We also have stamp duty on shares, and then we've got a government wondering why people are not listing in the UK. Well, if you've got a dual listing, you're going to buy in a country without stamp duty on shares. I mean, that's pretty obvious. We also obviously have death duties. And our death duties are driving the rich people out of the UK because they're 40%, which is incredibly high. A lot of countries have death duties, but they kick in at the real wealth. You know, ours start at £325,000, which is nothing. You know, in the US, they started about $16 million. So you're catching a whole... The US wants people to be rich. They want people to start businesses, make money, and they know that that helps the whole economy.
Absolutely.
We've got a government that wants everyone to be poor, and they haven't thought that through yet.
Well, what a cheery conversation for a Sunday morning. Catherine Brookbone, thank you so much. Up next, it's Michael Portillo. Michael, what's on your show?
Tom, very briefly, we'll be looking back at Tom Lehrer, the satirical singer. We'll be looking at what's going on at the Edinburgh Fringe. Should civil service internships be only for the working class? Coming up very shortly.
That sounds absolutely fascinating. Looking forward to seeing it all. Michael Portillo there, coming up to you after the weather forecast. But a big thank you to all my guests today, and thank you at home for watching as well. We'll be back next week, but now it's the weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. Storm Floris is heading our way with amber warnings in force across parts of Scotland. It's situated out towards the west of the UK at the moment, bringing its way eastwards over the UK as we head into the start of the new week. Before we get there, though, we do see a very brief ridge of high pressure across the UK through the rest of Sunday. We have got a weather front situated out towards the south and east at the moment. That continues to slowly sink its way southwards through the rest of Sunday afternoon with fairly clear skies, plenty of sunny spells developing as we go through much of the afternoon across the northern half of the country. One or two isolated showers just feeding into the north, but feeling pleasant where you do catch that sunshine, highs into the low or mid-20s, feeling a little more humid across the south and east if you're stuck underneath that cloud and rain. So a bit of a cloudy and perhaps damp end to the day across the very far south and east. Some sunny spells developing across northern parts of southwest England, parts of Wales, northern parts of England, seeing some late sunshine to end the day on Sunday. That sunshine perhaps a little hazier across parts of Northern Ireland, and we'll continue to see one or two of those isolated showers just feeding into western and northern parts of Scotland through Sunday evening. Then looking ahead to Sunday night, any of that rain eventually clears away with clear skies developing for most of us. However, all eyes out towards the west as we see Storm Floris arriving, bringing some outbreaks of really quite heavy rain across parts of Northern Ireland and into western Scotland. And those winds really picking up too. Staying a little bit drier across the south, albeit a cloudy night for most of the country. Temperatures quite widely staying in the mid-teens. So quite a humid night across the board. So a very wet and windy start to Monday morning across the northern half of the country. Yellow and amber wind warnings are in force across parts of